back. It's episode 4 of Captain Says, and I'm going to talk to, this time, Josh. His name is Josh. I've known you since, like 2001 maybe?
Something like that, via the org and AOL Messenger. Yeah, 2002, 2001, something like that.
Yeah, it might have been like late 2001. Now, you are... Tell me, what is your official occupation? What are you?
My official occupation is troubadour, journeyman. No, my main thing in life is pro wrestling. That's a big thing I'm into. So announcing
you're
and
like
commentating.
The announcer, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's my, there's not enough money in Australia to make a living off it, but that's where we're at the moment. There's a new global promotion that's looking at starting up, and they're actually taking Aussie applications. So you never know.
Oh.
You never know. They do have an affiliation with our promotion. So fingers crossed. We'll see how things go.
Because I remember last time I talked to you, you must have just like worked the night before or something, because your voice was just gone, and you were so hoarse, and it was hilarious talking to you then. So it's great you've got a voice to talk, so that's good.
Yeah, that was also due to the fact that Prince had been. I don't think I'd actually. Oh no, I saw you after the tour. That's right, we caught up.
Yeah,
we
after
caught
that.
up when you came down to Adelaide. That's right. Yeah, gosh. Sometimes I'm glad now when I do the pro wrestling announcing, I actually have two partners there at the desk with me, because
so it's not all you screaming.
Exactly. It comes to the end of the night now, and shit, I can actually speak. Or the next day, I don't have that day after effect. But good times.
So when did you first start the wrestling thing? Because that wasn't anywhere when I first knew you. When did that start up? When did you start the interest in wrestling?
Oh, I was always a fan. I was a fan since I was about 5 or 6 years old. But then there's a period that a lot of fans go through when they're kids, which is they lose touch with it for sort of around that same age where you're discovering girls and finding
more important things.
That's exactly right, and finding the coolest new bands and all that. That's like the focal point of that time of your life. And then sort of later on got back into it, and I think I started training, like in-ring training, in like 2009, and then I was shit. I wasn't very coordinated.
So you actually did the wrestling?
Yeah, I did the tryout, and then the brutal cardio and the weights training, and the taking the bumps and the falls and learning how to sell the injuries, pretend, put it on and all that stuff. Yeah, so.
Because I remember, 2001, you were a pretty big guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I reckon I dropped a good 20-odd, 30-odd kilos, and then on top of that, once I started training and.
But then it's muscle. It's not.
Yeah, then there was the muscle coming back on, which was a nice change. I could look at myself, take a photo of me with my shirt off. I never used to say that, to the missus, and of course. I've actually, because I stopped training, I've let myself go a bit. So I've got the love handles there and whatnot now. But yeah, it's
that's okay.
But I couldn't have imagined when I was a kid that you could actually get into something like that at a local level, and then to actually do it and know that people that have wrestled on our shows are now hired by WWE. It's extraordinary. So. Yeah,
you basically got in on the ground floor, before it was big here at all. So yeah, if WWE's going to come looking, that's where they're going to go. There's nowhere else. There's no one else. And there's great sort of Australian companies around that are putting on really good shows with wrestlers that you look at, and you look at them and go, geez, they should be getting paid. They should be making a living at this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people in Australia that are actually at that level. And you can even go to Japan, and if you're a star there, you can make a life as a wrestler. They treat them like gods and like an actual sport over there in Japan. Yeah.
And you spent time over there where I'm sure you've experienced that sort of thing where you open the newspaper and in the sports section there's actually pro wrestling results, it's...
You could do some good commercials, some good Japanese commercials for something.
Oh, mate, I tell you what, there's nothing like...
The ads over there are just, they're so good.
Well, a mate of ours, his name's Ladybeard, and he's a pro wrestler for one, and he's done stunts in movies and stuff like that, but he's also a metal K-pop singer, if that makes sense. So he gets out there and he's in the dress and he's got the pigtails and whatnot. And now I think he's actually started a girl group called Lady Baby, where they're in the studio at the moment, him and two very cute young Asian girls, and they're about to set the charts alight. So look out for Lady Baby.
I am going to search that as soon as we finish this conversation.
And he's the nicest guy he's the nicest person I've ever known or met in my life. So yeah, go out there and support Lady Beard if you like some K-pop, because you won't be disappointed.
I'm going to find that. This is a current news thing, right? How well do you know football? Probably more than me, which is zero.
What type of football?
I don't know. There's just all this talk about salary cap, and somebody got fined, and I have no idea what it's about. Can you explain it in 10 seconds to me?
Clubs are allocated a certain amount of money per season, and if they spend too much on players, then they may be spending too much on the top quality players that maybe other teams can't afford, and therefore if you breach the salary cap, it's basically seen as, hey, that's not fair, because, you can have like 5 LeBron Jameses of football, or, okay, let's say Kurt Tippett. I don't know, if we're talking AFL, then that's what it is. If it's NFL, then Peyton Manning, whoever the top star is. That's pretty much the gist of it. But as far as to the actual story you're referencing at the moment, I have no idea.
Neither do I. It's just been on the news like for the last 2 days. And because I know zero about most sport, I thought I'll ask you, because you probably know slightly more than me. I was going to ask Seth like a few weeks back, because it's always been in my brain. I don't know why. But then I thought I don't think that even exists in America. There's no such thing over there as a salary cap. They just pay people like $8 million a year to play basketball.
Oh, they do. They do. I know in the NBA they do have salary caps, because I know that even in, say, your NBA 2K15 and games like that, you actually have in season mode, or storyline mode, whatever you want to call it, you actually have a salary cap that you have to work within. So, yeah.
But I'm sure their salary caps are a lot bigger than the Australian ones.
Yes, most definitely. I think, I was just listening to, my mate Toddy and the Big Ballers podcast crew, and they were mentioning that basically, for what it costs an NBA team to buy, say, the lowest ranked player on their team, like he's starting on the bench, he may play 30 seconds per game. For the same price, you can buy the National Basketball League, which is Australia's version of the NBA, the entire league.
Thing.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the type of money that is in the American game as opposed to, say, in Australia, it's amazing. Crazy.
But see, wrestling is a thing that I know nothing about. Yeah, wrestling is one of those things that there's a huge fan base of, but I know nothing about it. And that's always been a concept which has just been weird to me. Like, I remember I was in Spain or Portugal one time and there was some music concert on TV, and huge, like, outdoor concert, singer, band. I had never seen them in my life. But, 300, 400,000 people, massive outdoor gig, knew every word of every song. And that whole concept that, it sounds dumb, but, there's things out there that I know nothing about. Like, huge things.
Oh, same here. Like, for instance,
and it just blows my mind, even though it sounds so dumb. I mean, of course there's things I don't know about. There's a million things I don't know about. Probably 8 million. But when I see it every time, I'm like, wow, like, that's a huge thing, and I've never heard of it in my life. But I mean, I've heard of wrestling, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, I guess it's like that. I mean, I'm the same with your superhero movies and that entire sort of genre that at the moment is all the rage. I mean, I'm a Ninja Turtles fan, and
original cartoon in 87.
Yes, absolutely, damn straight.
Yeah,
and as soon as I found out that James Avery from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was the voice of Shredder on that show, I can't watch that show without hearing "Woo!" in my head. Oh man, he was great.
But yeah, there's the superhero, not just movies, like all these TV series as well. Like Seth was talking about, because he does that Con TV. And yeah, he's really into like the whole thing. And that's a thing I'm sort of like peripheral on. Like, I know it's there, and I watch Gotham and The Flash.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to watch Supergirl when that starts, because that just looks nice. But yeah, there's so much I haven't seen. There's just not enough time in the world to watch all the shows I want to watch.
The thing with pro wrestling especially is that how do I put it? It's easy to be turned off it by watching really bad wrestling or a crazy storyline that is so convoluted. At the moment, a show called NXT, which is like WWE's developmental system, they have a show on their network, which is like a streaming service. Yeah. And there is some great stuff happening there at the moment. And the main, I guess, storyline over the championship is between these two guys who legit were friends, dating back 10, 15 years. They wrestled in the same independent companies for years and years, tagged against each other, were rivals against each other, or tagged with each other. And then now they've actually brought that to the masses, that actual friendship and that relationship. They've made a storyline out of it, and it's being very, very well done because a lot of the stuff is believable. You could actually believe in a real scenario this would be their reactions, and it's very, very cool. It's so there's some good stuff out there, but then there's some shocking stuff where you're like, God, even I'm embarrassed to be a wrestling fan. It's shocking stuff.
So how does Adelaide rate in like the wrestling scene in Australia compared to bigger cities? Melbourne, Sydney.
Very well. I mean, WWE don't come here as much just because the ticket sales tend to die down after a couple of tours, and then they go, okay, we'll just run the eastern states. But
give it a rest.
Yeah, that's it. But as far as the independent companies down here go, I mean, I guess an average crowd is 200 to 300 people, and if we can crack 500, we're like, wow, that was an amazing crowd. So that's the sort of numbers that you look at because people see WWE as the only thing, and then anything else must be an imitation, a knockoff, that sort of thing. But the talent that we have with the company that I'm a part of, Riot City Wrestling, and the other main company in Adelaide, Wrestle Rampage, I mean, they have, maybe we mentioned before, world-class talent and put on great shows, So, I think we're doing pretty well. And, in Sydney you've got PWA, in Melbourne you've got Melbourne City Wrestling, who have a great online product. You've got EPW in Perth, AWA Grindhouse in Queensland, which is like an 18 plus sort of show. So
every city's got its own independent companies, but is there a company that has things in different cities, or are they just city centric each one?
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're city centric.
So there's not one company which has one in Sydney and one in Brisbane.
No, EPW in Perth, Explosive Pro Wrestling, they started in Perth in 2003, I think, or 2002, and then they actually had an Adelaide branch, which is now Wrestle Rampage. They've been through several brand changes and partnership changes with overseas promotions, but yeah, each city has their own, sort of 2 or 3 companies, and there's always the 1 or 2 that have amazing shows, and I recommend, and then there's always the ones that you should probably steer clear of because they've spent too much time in the backyard and not with real trainers, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Oh, but that could be pretty funny to watch.
It is very funny if you want to sit there and it's not funny for me, but because I sit there and just go, oh no,
this is so bad.
You're not helping things, guys.
Down
Come
this
on,
sport to...
Exactly right. You're not helping the cause, brother. But sometimes there's a series on the internet called Botchamania, which is done by a fellow called Matthew Gregg in the UK, and he does these 5, 10, 15 minute web series each month that are all botches. It's all where things have gone wrong in the ring. So a choreographed move hasn't happened as planned, or somebody's Hulk Hogan's botched a line on the microphone and all that sort of stuff, like it's very, there's definitely appeal in, watching people stuff up, fail videos are the most watched things on the internet, most likely besides cats. So,
but there's a difference between watching someone who knows what they're doing stuff up than just someone who doesn't know what they're doing and just totally stuffs up because they don't know what they're doing.
That's it. That's exactly right. And sometimes when there's a stuff up...
I think they'd both be just as funny though.
Yeah, well sometimes when there's a stuff up, it can actually make things look more real because it's like, oh, that wasn't meant to happen, or...
that really hurt. His neck's really broken.
Exactly. That's how, actually, that's funny.
Here come the ambulance.
Yeah, it's funny that I watched a video. Well, actually, it's not funny. I saw a video. You know how when you're scrolling through Facebook through your feed and a video auto plays and you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that, but there wasn't enough time for me to scroll down. That happened earlier. I watched a guy do a moonsault off the...
A what?
Yes, right. Wrestling jargon.
Yeah, I don't know these words.
Okay. So a moonsault is basically where you are standing on the top rope. You can do it.
Oh, in the corner, yeah.
Yeah, you can do it standing as well, facing away from your opponent, and you kind of do a backflip and splash onto your opponent.
So you're standing up on the corner, on the top rope, like facing out to the audience.
Yes.
And then you fall back onto him.
Yes. So basically do like I don't know what the rotation would be there, like a 240 or something, a rotation, and then splash the guy. Well, the dude...
Hang on. So when he doesn't just fall back first, he turns around, right?
Yeah, so he actually connects... I'm
thinking you can't fall on your back. You'll die.
You basically connect with the guy belly to belly.
Okay, so he falls and twists and... Okay, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And this guy has just landed straight on his head. And the neck has actually... It was not pleasant. And that was one of those things where, yeah, like I said, I wish I hadn't actually seen that because that was terrible. But, but when nobody gets hurt, botches are quite funny. Yeah, but totally.
How common are serious injuries? I suppose if you're good at what you're doing, not that much at all.
Sometimes people even get hurt doing the damnedest things, like
getting out of bed. I fell over. You can do that.
Hey, I tore my quad, my quadricep muscle in my leg, actually bailing from the ring. I was on the show. I was the bad guy manager, and I was out there running my mouth, and then all of a sudden, the big bad, he's actually a fan favorite, but big dude comes running down to the ring, chair in hand, and I wanted to tease the fact that he was nearly going to get me, but not quite. So I waited until very last split second, but I waited a little too long, and I rushed actually jumping between the middle and top rope, to get out of the ring.
Yeah.
And my leg got caught on the rope, and something tore, and then as soon as I hit the floor, I just screamed. And one of the guys that was part of my crew, I guess you could say, he knew something was wrong because I wasn't, again, it was not a planned spot. Yeah. I was not meant to be hurt, getting sympathy. I'm a bad guy. And he just said, "Are you okay?" And it's like, "No, my quad is stuffed." And I've never torn my quad before that point, but people just talk about the burning feeling in your leg when that happens. And as soon as I felt that burn, I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm stuffed." And so here's this guy who's actually a lot smaller than me. He's one of the high-flying wrestlers, and he's carrying me out of the ringside area. It was actually, looking back at it, I'm sure the footage is quite funny. But that was painful, and just that, it was a couple of weeks where I could barely walk, put weight on it, just something like that. So, I mean, injuries, it can be injuries like that, then you get devastating ones that can keep people out for months. I guess it just depends on, your training, and obviously if you've been training a lot, repetition is key, and wrestling with good people. I think that if a wrestler goes in there with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, the chances of them getting hurt are much greater than with somebody who takes care of the people that they're in there with whilst trying to make it look like they're kicking their ass. I mean, that's the whole objective,
Yeah.
So,
I'm just looking at a list of people, famous people from Adelaide. Now, you were born in Adelaide?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay, I'm just looking. Sarah McLeod is from Adelaide, which I knew. Sean McAuliffe is from Adelaide, which is good. Glenn Shorrock. Guy Sebastian at Eurovision right now.
He's from about 10 minutes down the road from my place at Paradise, yeah.
Wow. Orianthe, she was that guitarist, wasn't she? For Michael Jackson.
Yes, she was on the, if anybody out there has the This Is It DVD or Blu-ray, then that's the lovely guitarist, yep.
Paul Kelly, there you go. Angie Hart. Oh, I remember her. Frente.
Accidentally was released.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's what we have to talk about. We have to talk about you interviewed Santo Cilara.
All right, let's do it.
Because I still haven't listened to it. I just haven't had time. And it was a week ago, I saw it. And I'm like, oh, my God, you talked to Santo. So for anyone who doesn't know, comedy legend in Australia, sort of not doing comedy that much. It's really just sports stuff he does now. But, actually, on that, have you been paying attention? Is he maybe a writer or something? I don't know.
He does. Yeah, I mean, he's always sort of got a finger in the working dog pie, working dog productions, whether it's a little bit of work on Utopia, which is a show that they're, I think the next season's due out fairly soon.
Yeah, second season's coming.
Oh, yeah.
So how did it happen that you even talked to him? Who contacted who? What was it about?
It was actually pretty easy. Knowing that, it all comes back to wrestling, knowing that he was a pro wrestling fan, and my podcast, Wrestle Radio Australia, we try and focus on the Australian talent and, what's going on down here, but I like to also interview people who are fans, whether they're celebrities or they have shows of their own, just as I can help get their stuff over and as well just have a bloody good chat. So, always knew that Santa was a wrestling fan, and I thought, bugger it. You know, I've always been a D-Gen fanatic and The Late Show and Frontline and all that stuff. The panel I used to watch every Wednesday night, and I just thought, you know what, let's try and get him. So I emailed Working Dog Productions, and Pauline Hirsch was very, very kind, and she told Santo about it. He was all for it, because, you know, I think when he ever tried to talk about wrestling on the panel and shows like that, which was like a current affairs chat show in the late 90s, he kind of would always have them like trying to hurry him up, or, you know, just
come on, nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, they'd change the subject and he'd just throw down his notes like, you know, come on, man, let me get a 60-second spot, you know, one thing. He met like the former world champion. No, we got to move on. He's like, God, this is a big deal, you know. But so I just contacted them, and he was all for it, and we arranged a time, and that was pretty much it.
So was it Skype? Was it a phone call?
It was Skype. I regret doing that now, because I thought, Skype would sound a bit better. And being the fact that he works at a production company, and that's where he was when he actually took the call. He was at the office. I thought, I'm sure he'd have a decent mic hooked up for Skype and all that sort of thing. So I thought, right, we'll do it by Skype. And later on, I thought maybe we should have done it by phone, because there was a bit of that room sort of echo when somebody's talking on towards a laptop mic. But I cleaned it up as best I could, and it's a great chat. It was just so much fun. It was to sit there and chat with someone that I've been watching since I was 9 or 10 years old, you know, on telly. Like, that was a trip. And my other podcast actually, Social Audio Think Tank. I just did an episode of that with my mate Joshua Liston, where we actually did an episode based on my interview with Rove McManus, because he was fascinated about, you know, how do you go about getting a big name guest and yada yada. And so that was also, you know, I thought, geez, like, we're doing a show about one of my shows. I never thought that would happen, you know.
Man, that's meta. That's what that is.
Well, you know what it's like when you're on, you know, part of a Spreecast, or you're part of any other show where, you know, you're talking about Peach and Black podcast. I mean, heck, you guys were highlighted in NME magazine. I mean, for a podcaster, that's just like bow down to the king. You know what I mean? That is huge. That's massive, dude. Your podcast, the Peach and Black podcast, about Prince and all the album reviews, and just the awesome show and chemistry that is that you have with the other guys. That was the first podcast I ever downloaded. When I got back on, I was offline for about 4 or 5 years, and then when I got back online, your laptop and, you know, the ADSL connection at the house and I looked up Prince, and then I found through the org, I think I found the Peach and Black show, and then I'm listening to these voices, and I'm hearing the name Player. I'm like, hang on, is that who I think it is? Hang on, and then Toe Jam. It turns out I used to chat, and then I find out that you are who you were. I'm like, holy shit, it's a reunion. But it's always been a special show to me, because it was the first pod that I downloaded, and then I started finding out, okay, podcasts. Let's get into these things and start listening to some more, you know, and great show.
Thank you. The weird thing is I don't listen to any podcasts at all.
Really?
None. I haven't, I just don't find it that interesting to listen to other people's opinions.
How ironic is that coming from you?
I know.
I love that.
I have really strong opinions, and I don't want to listen to any contrary opinions. So I just don't listen to anything. I listen to music, and that's about it. Like, I have listened to the Prince podcast once or twice, and the Michael Dean one is a Freedom Train, whichever one that is. I listened to 1 or 2 of those, like, just after we started, just to see, you know, what are we doing? What are other people doing? And that was it. That was enough. I never listened to about anything. So anyway.
It's a great comedy podcast I love listening to, just because it's a barrel of laughs. And again, like, the 2 guys that do it, they have an amazing back and forth chemistry. It's called Dan and Carl's Zeitgeist, and they're 2 guys, I believe, from Brisbane. Really funny stuff. Then every second Monday they put out a YouTube video called The Pre-Geist, which is them right before they actually start recording the show. Okay. I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of, how do I put it? If you're a fan of like drive time radio, but, you know, without the cliched, I guess, topics and, you know, like, mate, Jono.
If you've ever got caught with something, give us a call and tell us all about it. That stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, mate. It's just a great fun show. So I recommend that one if you want to laugh. You know, it's good.
Talking about comedy, did we finish what we were talking about? Where were we?
I don't know. We went from wrestling to the Peach and Black podcast. Geez, we're all over the shop today.
So tell me your podcast. You do the Wrestle Radio. What is it? Riot City Wrestling. What's the name of it? The official name.
All right. Riot City Wrestling's the promotion that I commentate for. The podcast is called Wrestle Radio Australia, and that drops every week. I'm trying to keep it to a Tuesday, like an every Tuesday sort of schedule now. It was Fridays, and Friday. The weekend's not an apt time to listen to podcasts or to sort of. So we try and cover the latest goings on in Australian wrestling, and also have interviews. So that's sort of what we're all about there. And used to talk about the American stuff, but there's a million shows out there that talk about the latest John Cena match and everything. So we just keep it to the local stuff. And numbers have dropped a bit since we've done that, but I find that we're doing something unique and different. So that's what that's about.
Yeah. Well, what's the point of talking about the same thing that there's 25 other podcasts talking about?
Probably having the same opinion. You know what I mean? And yeah.
So there's that one. Is that the one that Santo was on?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one.
And then you've got the other one. There's two others, isn't there?
There's Social Audio Think Tank, which is done with... it's not my show. It's Joshua Liston and Jackson Rogers. It's their show. But Jackson had to take some time off podcasting and whatnot. So I've sort of jumped in there, and it's a podcast about podcasting. And so we just sort of throw our ideas around and, have a bit of a rant here and there. And, it's refreshing to, as a listener for so long and now being on the show, it's refreshing to hear a podcast about podding that isn't just trying to sell you, the latest WordPress plugin and all that sort of stuff. Click on our affiliate link. That's great. If people can monetize their show, good on you. But ours isn't about that. It's just about just having a good chat. And they're not too long, maybe 10 minutes to half an hour. So a nice little one there if you've got a short ride home. It's good.
Uh-huh. See, that's one thing with Peach and Black. We never really... we thought about monetizing, and then we thought, nah, because Prince won't like that. The minute we make 1 cent, that's it, we're done. We're cut off. There's nothing else.
That's a very good point.
Because other podcasts, they might have been free, and then they changed to charging, even if it's just $1 an episode, you 1,000 people listen to it, you made $1,000.
Yeah.
But I think the benefits we got non-monetary were much better than just getting some cash.
Oh, totally. Dude, that's, goes without saying, especially the New York meeting
episode,
that you can't make that shit up. That's the best part about it, is that you just cannot. It's amazing, that show, and just hearing your experience, and it's one thing when somebody is telling the story of another person's perspective, or telling somebody else's story even, but to hear that experience from you guys firsthand, man, unreal.
The funnier thing would have been, though, because as soon as that night was over, me and MC went straight back to the hotel. And I can't remember what time it was in Australia, but we Skyped Toe Jam and Player. And that was about a 4-hour conversation, repeating everything that had just happened. But we never even entered our brain to record that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's stuff we forgot. There had to have been. There was a lot happened in that short time. But anyway, we didn't, so too bad. And occasionally we'll be recording and we'll be like, oh, do you remember when he said that, or I said this? And we're like, have we ever even mentioned that since it happened? Because, something will just pop into your brain out of nowhere, and you're like, everyone forgot about that. Even we forgot about that. It's crazy.
Well, the show that I think is still my favourite Peach and Black episode is the show about nothing, which I think was just some lost audio that you guys just decided, hey, we'll just throw this out there. And it's still my favourite ep, because it's a hodgepodge of randomness. I think it was brilliant. I think shows like that's
what this show is.
Well, I think shows that bring out the personality of the hosts as well, it's good to sort of have those now and then, is to just throw in an oddball episode, and that way I think if people can relate to you more, then they're obviously going to relate to the show in general, just because they enjoy you as a person. I think that's half of podcasting, is that people actually enjoy you as a person. So no wonder my numbers have gone down lately, because I've been talking too much. But no, it's not that.
You're just so unlikable.
Hashtag heal. Bad guy.
But see, stuff like that, that's the thing that's what this show, I think, is. It's just, that's why I don't think I've even called this show a podcast, even though I suppose technically it is. It's just a conversation, though. And it's like, I didn't talk to you before the show. We clicked start the call on Skype, and we're like, okay, let's start.
Yeah, I said, hey, how you going? And you're like, no, let's get into it. Save it for the show. And I love that. I think that's always the best way to go, because when you listen to like commercial radio and those morning shows, you can tell that, okay, so we're going to have this gag here, and then, oh, mate, oh, jeez, I'm not touching that one with the 10 football. Boing. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need more boing sound effects. It might get some more listeners.
That's right. Just chuck those in post. We'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, that you just reminded me. David Letterman, who has now finished. He's done. From a bunch of other people, not me, obviously, other people who have been on that show, they say that as well. It's like he doesn't, maybe 1 in a million he'll meet someone before a show, but he wants to save everything for the show. As soon as you walk out, that's the first time you see each other and start talking, which is a really smart thing to do, because if you've already talked, where's that spontaneous thing? I mean, even though those shows, well, I'm going to ask you, I heard you've been on a summer holiday, where did you go? And then you tell a story. But if you already know that story, you're going to be much less interested in it the second time around. So it's a lot better to just go spontaneous. This is the first time we've talked. Do it now.
And you can tell when somebody has sort of had that run through, like one of my favourite radio shows ever, Martin Malloy. And even
Martin Malloy. I want to get Tony Martin on this show. That's what
well, if you do that, then I must join you on that call, because that would be, I think I could die after that actual moment. I think having T Martin on. Also, Get This with Ed Cavalier was another show that he did, where they would write their gags and they would say, I've got a spot here, you've got a spot here. That Get This. That's it. But they would never go over the material with each other. They'd be like, I've got a spot here that's about 40 seconds, or I've got a spot here that's about, and then they would just let it happen. They'd tell the producer, obviously, because he's got to hit the buttons, but they would try, and that's why it felt so spontaneous and off the cuff, because they would just make sure it was natural. They knew that was the key to a good show, really, and a different show.
Spontaneous.
So, that's right. You need to pull those Nickelback gags out from out of nowhere. You know what I mean? You can't spoil those. Jeez.
Nickelback, I think, will never fail to be a punchline. Like, to this day, I still hear, jokes or something. Nickelback is the punchline. It's still funny, because they're just so horrible. It's great. But you know what's not great? Great segue there. Martin Malloy. And, once the best show ever, and now don't even talk to each other.
I know, right? All because of Boytown Confidential.
Boytown, which was not, the best movie, but wasn't it about the behind the scenes, Tony made a behind the scenes thing, and then Mick didn't like it, and then that was it. It was over.
Yep, he made a mockumentary. There's so basically Boytown, it's funny because Boytown was a mockumentary of a boy band, and then Tony decided when people are off filming other scenes and sitting here we've got 20 minutes, half an hour with this guy, he would just sit down and record interviews with them, but it wasn't sort of scripted. They would sit there for ages and ages and try and get these awkward sort of reactions and answers, and because they were awkward, they were real. That made it feel more. So anyway, so Tony did this production.
A mockumentary about the mockumentary.
Yep, exactly right. Inception, hello. And apparently from all reports, it wasn't released because it was actually funnier than the film. It was meant to be like a DVD extra, or, one of those bonuses that would come out, 6 months later with the deluxe box set release, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much the reason why, I think, because it was so much funnier than the movie, was these interviews, these sit down interviews, and they had a bit of a falling out.
Do you think Mick Malloy, do you think there's two ways I could look at this. Mick was offended because this mockumentary about the mockumentary behind the scenes thing was funnier than the movie that he had made, and he directed it or something, didn't he?
I don't think it was.
There's that, or then was Mick offended because he thought Tony was making fun of the movie, which was his movie?
No, I think he was insecure about the fact that it was funnier than the movie that he
and therefore
had a big part in writing. Yes,
was funnier than him.
Yes.
Who knows,
my belief and my thought process leads me to that conclusion, because I think it's pretty much a known fact. Well, it's a known fact that I think Tony is funnier than Mick, just because I think he's more of an all-rounder when it comes to comedy and television and that sort of thing. I love Mick Malloy, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, there's certain things that Mick does that Tony can't do, and there's certain things or a lot of things that Tony can do that Mick can't, and I think that's why they're actually a great team. So I mean, it's the same. I bring it back to wrestling. My gosh, people are going to go, "Gosh, shut up, dude." but a great tag team. You've always got the guy that's the speed and the technician, and then you've got the muscle. The brute power. And they were just always a great combo in that way.
Now, if I tried to get, it's just some miraculous thing, I got Tony Martin on the show, then no chance Mick could ever come on, or the other way around.
No, well, not on the same episode.
Oh, no, but Mick just might go, "Oh, you had Tony on, get stuffed."
I don't know.
I'm not talking to you.
I don't know. Well, actually, you know what? Justin Hamilton's podcast, we're plugging every other bloody show here but our own. Can you take this photo, please? He's an Aussie comedian. For folks who don't know Justin Hamilton, he has basically has other comedians on his show. He's had some fascinating interviews, and there is actually there's several with Tony, but there's one in particular where he does talk about the Boytown Confidential scandal. So he doesn't go into details as to, I guess, the feud, but he talks about the actual project. So I think once you hear him sort of talk about it, you might make up your own mind as to why they're not talking, but that's a beauty. I'll link you that one. It's a good one.
Justin Hamilton. I've heard the name. I don't think I've seen him. But again, go to YouTube. He's right there. I can see him. There's his face. YouTube's great.
Isn't it?
But you know what? Episode 3, I talked to Rory Scovel.
Yes.
Which I thought was a massive scoop to talk to big time, well, not big time, but big American comedian, on TV sitcoms in America. I was pretty impressed with that.
That was a good listen, and it's a guy that I'm not very familiar with, but it was a great show, great podcast.
Well, I did that, and I really wasn't thinking about anyone who would listen to the show. I'm just like, I want to ask these questions and find out stuff for myself. The same as when I'm talking to you. I mean, people listen to this, great, they can hear it, but I'm just asking questions that I want to know the answer to. And it was great to talk, about comedy to a comedian who knows what he's doing. That was great.
Yeah. And that was, for me, I think part of the appeal of talking to people like Rove and Santo was that having watched what they do for so long and them talking about it and putting themselves also into, how do I put it, they've had the same experiences that we've had, whether it's stressing over an interview that's not recording, and then of course you find out that it's not, and you've got some big star there that's he mentioned the Kylie Minogue incident where he, years and years and years ago, we're talking like the mid-2000s or something, on his Australian late night show, Rove, he had Kylie Minogue on, and so they were, I don't know if you've heard the episode yet.
I haven't. Like I told you, I don't listen to podcasts, but I'm going to listen to the one with Santo and possibly the one with Rove. With
Rove, it was a case of they were having this interview with Kylie Minogue, and they had the camera set up, everything. They're sitting there, and they're about halfway through, and Kylie didn't have much time. They had like a 15-minute sort of window to do this interview, and so they're halfway through, and the cameraman just is kind of like waving him over, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, no, it's not recording. There was no tape in the camera. So Kylie apparently was really pissed off. They rushed through the interview once they got a tape in there, and then Kylie blacklisted Rove McManus for years because because she was like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing," sort of thing. And then later on, they actually got her back on. But because Todd was my co-host, Todd Eastman. He was talking about the fact that he was on my back all week saying it better bloody record and nothing better happen. We better actually have this in the can once we spend an hour talking to Rove, and he sort of related to us in that way. And I thought that was really cool because he's been in that position before as a community TV host or whatever, where, maybe 5 people are watching this, but, but we're still going to put on a show, that sort of thing. And,
that was
he was a top bloke.
That was one thing I really liked about The Late Show, is it really felt like it was made, again, not really caring about the audience that was going to watch it. It felt like someone just with a bunch of home video cameras just filming some stuff, like shit scared. It's like, 8 people might see this, so what? And that's like the whole appeal of that show to me, is like, it's not, like every show now just panders exactly to the audience. It's like, well, we've got to have jokes and we've got to do this and that because that's what people want to see. In this show, some of the stuff was just so ridiculous. You're just like, what is happening?
Like halfway through the show, they'd have a toilet break, and the toilet break consisted of a 2 to 3 minute video clip, usually from a show called Potluck, which legit was potluck. They would take talent acts like X Factor, but they would just take them in off the street. People would rock up, do their thing, and Bernard King would sit there and just go, "How long have you rehearsed, young man? Let me tell you, do you have a singing teacher? Yes? Well, I would suggest getting a new one because that was terrible. 14 out of 100.
That's exactly right.
And then back on with the show. But moments like that, commercial Crime Stoppers taking local TV ads that are usually starring the person who owns the business, you know what I mean? Yeah. Ken Bruce has gone completely mad. Boing, 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 boing. Right.
Have you seen the ads for a new show called Open Slather?
No.
Well, let me just send you a link right now, because what it is sketch comedy with some of our favorite people. It has Gina Riley, Glenn Robbins, Magda Sabansky, Stephen Curry, Shane Kenny, and they're just the ones that I see in the picture. And there's more. It's got a whole bunch of new people. Dave Eastgate is one of them, because I know him. And it's on Comedy Channel on Foxtel, which means I won't be able to see it straight away. But, it took Foxtel, basically a pay TV cable company, to spend money on Australian sketch comedy. Because apart from like Kinney, there's been nothing for years. And
the ads for Kinney actually put me off it. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this.
I saw the ads and I thought, who's this idiot? And then I watched it and I was actually laughing out loud. No pun. I was laughing. I said Shane Kenny. I meant Shane Jacobson.
Oh, that's all right then.
But he was Kenny in the show, which is why I said that.
Gotcha.
Not to be confused with Kinney. But, it's fast forward. Half of them. I hope it's good, because I remember Let Loose Live. I was so excited about that. Did you ever see that?
Let Loose Live? When was this?
Oh, God, I don't know. A few years ago. And I think it got 3 episodes and that was it. But it was basically the same thing. It had, like, Michael Veitch, who is just his face alone is enough to make me laugh.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good show. And Peter Moon, all those classic guys.
The Fast Forward crew.
Yeah. And this is more of that. So I just hope it's good. I want it to be good. I want it to succeed because I want to watch it. And I want to see more of it, not 4 episodes and then, not enough people watched it. But Foxtel said that they're going to give them 20 episodes and then see what happens after that. So hopefully it's great. Executive producer is the guy who did all of Chris Lilly's stuff. So, Angry Boys, Summer Heights High.
Oh, I love his stuff. Gee.
It should be good.
Jonah from Tonga. That is like, I don't care what people say. That show is fucking hilarious, right? And it is, I used to go to school with kids who were just like that. Just like that. I remember a Kiwi kid called Lewis, and he was, mate, I tell you what, he was just like Jonah. I'm not joking, it's, those characters. Daniel and Nathan on Angry Boys, man, I always knew kids like that who were just those little shitbags, those little rascals they'd hit you, they'd pick on you, they'd take your lunch money, they'd call your names, and at the end of the day, they were always popular, but at the same time, people looked at them and went, "You're still a dickhead, mate," and they're those kids,
See, that's the thing. I mean, some of Chris Lilly's stuff got a lot of criticism. Some people said it was racist and you can't say this and you can't do that. But, that's comedy. You can't tell comedy, you can't do that. That's not funny. If you want to go down the freedom of speech line, you can say whatever you want. Some people might think it's funny, some people are not going to think it's funny. But political correctness has killed so much comedy, it's pathetic.
It's amazing when you look back at that stuff from the 80s, especially Paul Hogan, all that sort of stuff.
Even the first couple of years of Fast Forward was, now, go back and watch Kingswood Country if you want to see something funny.
Oh, jeez, leave the money on the fridge, you bloody wog. Yep.
Best show ever.
Oh, mate.
But see, now that show just wouldn't even get past like the first person in like any sort of production place. It'd be like, what is this? No way. We can't show that. You said this word and you implied this. That's just rubbish. It's total rubbish.
Unless you are actually ethnic, like a Paul Fennick who does housos and pizza and that sort of stuff, you can
get away with it.
you can bend those rules and you can really take it to the cliff with some of the ideas that they have. And again, it's characters. I think that like sometimes a bit too much of that show is a bit overwhelming. It's a bit much, but those characters are relatable,
because they're real people.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know people like all of those people. It was so ridiculous.
We should talk a little bit about Letterman. A bit more about David Letterman, because him wrapping up his show. Yeah. I mean, I've been a fan since, my gosh, when it moved to CBS, Channel 9 in Australia picked it up, so that would have been...
I was just thinking the other night, didn't this used to be on Channel 9? And it did.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and now it's been on Channel 10 for years now, though.
Yeah, I reckon 1994, I was about 10 years old, and I got into it like I was hooked.
But see, there was an article, I don't even want to call it an article, it's just garbage, on news.com.au, which is a garbage website.
Which is why you were perusing it at the time.
Well,
I need my trash fixed.
It used to have news, and out of habit, I still go to it. But it's just the last year, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And now it's like I don't even want. I'm going to delete it. I just don't want to even go there anymore.
Journalism is quite a loose as a profession these days, I must say.
It's like this, and it was David Letterman, 33 years. It's the end. It's all over, and this guy called James Law, that's his name, look him up,
Jimmy Law,
he writes an article and it's called David Letterman Ends, Good Riddance, You Were Never That Funny Anyway.
What?
And, it's total, clickbait garbage, because that's what news.com.au, that's all they do these days, is just, people click on this and we get advertising money, that's what it's all about. Who cares what we say, it doesn't matter, just get people to click on it. And it worked, because there's hundreds and hundreds of comments going, you are an idiot, David Letterman is a legend and you're a total nobody hack. And it's just a hilarious thing to read the comments.
I mean, even as a fan, I'll admit that the last few years have not been... The show hasn't been as, I guess, fun as it used to be back in the day.
Nothing ever is.
Well, that's true, but I also found that there was a lot more... I remember the skits that he used to do. One of the funniest things I remember was when Steve Martin was on the show, and this would have been about, 15-odd years ago, and it was Steve and Dave's gay vacation. And
they just replayed that, yeah.
Oh, that was so funny. And every time they'd have Richard Simmons on, it was just, it was absolute magic the way that those two would work each other. And Richard Simmons, he was in on it. Back in the day it was like, hey, you're copying it. But now you watch those skits and you know that he was in on it, and his fans, obviously gave him the sympathy vote, and they were, that's what they sort of fed on and put over. And then from Dave's side, it was the fact that, well, come on, you're oiling yourself up like a turkey. So if you're going to stand there basted and ready for baking, then I guess I'm going to have to make jokes about you. And it was awesome.
See, a show like that, how you cannot do that every single day and be hilarious. Of course, there's going to be nights which are not as good as other nights, and that can be guest dependent. It can be his mood dependent. It could be anything. But this guy, this stupid guy, I don't want to talk about him anymore. It's so sad, because what am I going to watch now? I mean, the weird thing is, Conan's the only old guy left. Leno's gone. Craig Ferguson is gone. And now Letterman is gone.
I know that Jimmy Fallon cops a fair bit of shit, and sometimes his shilling is, for people's films and things like that, is just so non-believable, I guess is the best way to put it. But he is so friggin' talented, that guy. That's what gets him over the line, is that the guy can sing, his impressions, he really is an all-rounder, and I think that that's where in the end he's going to do just fine, because he can do so much. And I don't know, I just think that there's a real star factor with Jimmy Fallon, and when he's speaking to the audience, he does come across quite genuine. And that's actually one thing I loved about Dave's finale, was that the way that the show ended in the last couple of minutes, I think was very respectful, and I think that he showed that he showed his true class as an entertainer and as a person in television, in the sense that it wasn't all about him. He didn't make this a big wank fest over, hey, look at me, I'm David Letterman, thank me for everything I've done for television. It was nothing like that, and I felt that was the best thing about the actual finale, was that he treated the people he worked with on the show with the utmost respect, and that was very, very cool. I dug that.
But he's always been like that sort of, with that sort of thinking, it's always been, how did I get here? I'm just a guy. I'm not. He doesn't come out and say, I'm the star David Letterman. He's just the face. But then, there's all these other people who were making the show.
Yeah.
And he's just that guy. He was a great guy at what he did. But it's going to be weird that now I can't see that show anymore.
So who's taking over Dave's spot?
Stephen Colbert.
Okay.
Which is going to be weird because he was on the Colbert Report for I don't know how many years that went for. But he was always in that character. And I've never seen him just be himself. And I think so many people are just waiting to see not just what he's going to do with the show, but what is the real Stephen Colbert like? Because nobody knows, unless you know him, which I don't. I've just seen the show. And he was always in that character. So it's going to be interesting. And Jon Stewart's leaving as well.
And no more Craig Ferguson as of a while ago.
I know. That's. I mean, you can watch Celebrity Name Game, but it's just not the same.
He's a funny bastard. He is. Oh, man.
I'm just hoping that now that he's got time, he's going to come to Australia and do some shows, because that was always his excuse not for coming. He's been here once, like in the 80s sometime. And anytime somebody asked him about coming to Australia, he's like, I remember a strip club in Adelaide in the 80s. He tells this story. But I just hope now that he's got time.
Whenever a celebrity comes to Adelaide, they've always got a Crazy Horse strip club story. It's always the way.
That was it. That was Crazy Horse. That was
always the one. I used to work across the road from that place in Hindley Street. So I've seen some craziness, don't worry.
All I can say is it's going to be weird. There's like an empty spot there now, and there's not going to be anything until September. Like Craig had guest hosts filling in between until when James Corden started, but the Late Show's not doing that. They're just done now, and they're coming back in September. So there isn't even going to be a show at all for the next, June, July, or next 3 months. So there's just this big gap. It's sad. I wonder if David Letterman will come on this show.
I'm sure he would. Because he's such a recluse. That I'm sure he would jump on this program.
The funniest thing is anytime when there was a guest sitting there, and anytime Dave mentioned anything about, I'd go and see that, and they're like, no, you won't. You don't do anything. You never leave your house. You come from the house straight to the studio, and then you go home again. You don't go anywhere. It was funny because then you see that, because of course he comes out with the monologue, and he's like, I was walking in Central Park today, and I saw 2 squirrels polishing their nuts, and whatever joke he does. But he wasn't walking in Central Park because he just doesn't do that. So it was so fun. Howard Stern was great on Letterman every time because Dave always sort of like opened up a bit more with him, and Howard always got stuff out of Letterman, which I think no one else did, which was great. Because Howard Stern is a great interviewer. I've
seen a couple of clips on YouTube of, again, how great is YouTube, of, you think we have shares in that place or something? Shares in Google. I've seen a couple of clips where Letterman has been on Howard Stern's show, and I don't know what it is about Howard Stern, whether it's just the guests know what the audience is there to hear, and that's people, opening up or telling the scandalous stories or letting people into that part of their lives where they normally wouldn't. I don't know if part of it's that, or if Howard just has this persuasive personality where people sort of when he's behind that microphone, he is like the pilot of a plane, and people says, all right, well, you're there and we may have a bit of turbulence, but in the end, I trust you to get the job done and get this over the line. And I think that may be sort of whether that's what it is with him. I don't know, but it's amazing how he can just get almost whatever he wants out of a guest on the mic.
No, I've heard someone talking about this just in the last few days, and they're like, when you're there, you're in this little booth, and it's like so intimate, and Howard's just talking to you, and you're just in this little dark room with the headphones on, and he's not persuasive, but he like hypnotizes you with his voice. Because I suppose everyone, in America, a lot of people listen to Howard Stern. So when you're on the show, you just talk. You don't even think that there's people listening. It's just you and him right there.
Yep.
And he's a master interviewer, and I wish we could get his show in Australia. I don't think we can, legally.
There's got to be a stream somewhere. There's no podcast of it?
I don't know. I haven't looked that far into it, but I wish it was just like on the radio here. But it's not going to be. I mean, even in America, you've got to pay for it. It's on Sirius.
One thing I'd love to talk to you about, because I'm sure you'll be opinionated on it, and it's something that I'm always opinionated on. Here we bloody go. And radio, FM radio, commercial radio. Now, it is most certainly changed in the last 30 odd years. Over that time, especially in the last 20 years, it's become I guess, formulaic. There is a formula, like a recipe, if you will, to the way that commercial radio, FM radio's been done.
Yeah.
Do you listen to radio? Because I don't really. Everything I sort of take in as far as audio goes these days is podcasts and music and YouTube, streaming music on YouTube. If, say, I am stuck with the radio in the car, I'm like, shit, I forgot to bring my phone and my iPod, damn it. I'll put it on talkback because I just find it a bit easier to take in. As someone who's a little older than I am, can you remember that moment when you heard the radio changing and it was like, oh gee, this is not what it used to be?
I don't remember it changing specifically, but I do remember just not listening to the radio anymore.
Right.
Like on FM, like here in Sydney, you've got WSFM, which is like a classic hits thing. It's all like, 70s, 80s, maybe some 90s.
Easy listening.
It's not easy listening, but it's
okay.
there is that one as well, which I do listen to as well sometimes. But I remember at one point I was listening to Today FM and Triple M, the big commercial ones, and I just remember thinking, this is just horrible. One of the issues was the horrible compression they use on FM radio, which just makes it sound loud and slightly distorted and just garbage to my ears. That was one of the reasons, but I just remember just not wanting to listen to it anymore. I didn't consciously notice a change, but I'm sure subconsciously I'm just like, I don't want to hear this anymore.
I think I noticed it with the repetition, because for me the repetition's a big one. You're hearing those songs over and over, and say you're working a shift and they make you listen to a particular radio station while you're at work. And so every hour for 8-9 hours you just hear the same
it's 1:15
playlist.
There's We Are the Champions again. Yep, good stuff.
But mostly the new stuff, I can handle some of the classic rock if that's on a repeat, I don't mind. But when you got these horrible, insipid, annoying songs with just... For instance, you hear songs on the radio, people like Justin Timberlake who are using auto-tune. It's like, dude can sing! You do not need auto-tune, but you can hear it even on the radio with all that compression, and it's... I don't know, man. It's just not the same. It's not as there isn't that organic feel even with the comedy shows. Sometimes you have to go to community radio to hear, some more natural kind of banter.
Who used to be great on commercial radio?
Yep.
A guy who can just talk absolute non-stop about any garbage you want to throw at him.
I'm waiting for it.
Is Akmal.
Oh, Akmal. I thought you were going to say Spoon Man.
No. Akmal. He can just talk about anything and somehow it's funny. Not always, but sometimes when it's not funny, it's even funnier, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if he was on radio in Adelaide, but this is a few years back now, and he could just, I think he did like afternoon, might have been drive time for like 2 or 3 hours, and it was just non-stop garbage, and it was hilarious. Because he would do those same things, like, if you've ever been caught, doing a donkey, whatever, call up and tell us about it. And just, the way he talks about things, he's very funny. I like Akmal.
He's good. I've seen the times when, and I know what you mean by not being funny, actually being funny, and that was sometimes when he was on Good News Week, and he would just, he'd be so stumped, and as that... But watching this pothead trying to remember the answer or trying to come up with a witty line was often funnier than the material. It was gold itself, you know what I mean? But then sometimes, you're like, the not being funny would actually not be funny, you know what I mean? So it's hit and miss, but yeah.
But how comedians deal with a joke that just doesn't work well sometimes is the best thing. Like I was talking to Rory about that, because there was a few times, I can't remember exactly what he did or how he did it, but he'd do a joke and it might have been, it was a really American-centric joke and Australians just didn't get it. And just the way he just kept going or made a comment about it, that was so much funnier than, whatever the joke was. Even if I got the joke. It's just how they deal with it is, that's somebody who knows what they're doing.
And often that admission of failure, is quite endearing as well, and that's often a very good way to handle it, is that if something's stuffed up, go, oh, that was shit, wasn't it? And that's often going to get a laugh because you go, yeah, we hear you, mate. It's good on you,
Because, I think there was one, he said something and there were like 3 people laughed out of like a full comedy store. And he's just like, oh, I'll make sure to do that one again tomorrow night. Which is, it was just good.
I'll make sure that one's in the set when I record my DVD. Jeez. That's going to go down a treat. That's going to be in the trailer. That's going to be in the that will sell units right there, that gag. Yeah.
FM radio.
Yeah.
I did listen to Talkback for a couple of years. I just totally went off FM altogether. And then I just got really sick of that because I realized it's just whinging people. That's all it is.
Your AM Talkback.
It is. And it took me a while to realize that because for a while I just thought, oh, yes, I think that. But then after a while I'm just like, yeah, I think that. But it's just people ringing up and just complaining about, a cyclist drove past me and said something. And it's all these totally personal stories. It's like, I'm not that interested in these total strangers' stories. And so I just stopped listening to Talkback as well because it's just horrible. I don't know. Player sent me that link not that long ago. Oh, you stopped listening to new music when you're 33? And I'm like, yeah, that's about right. Because I couldn't tell you any song in the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I'm 30 and I'm not.
Except for K-pop. That's the one thing I'm keeping up with for some reason. But anything Western music, it's just, it's horrible. And I just don't have the energy to go and, find some good new music.
I think and now it's knowing where to start. Okay, where do I go looking for the good tunes? And so now, of course, I'm going to go to the stuff that I grew up on, the classics, and sort of get it back into that field, So if I was going to look for new music now, I'd probably be looking at the latest Steel Panther album or something, because that's the extent of the new music that I take in as well. It's I don't know what it is. I mean, part of it is that being disillusioned by everything that you hear on the radio and whatnot. It's just gee, music sucks, and then is there actually good music out there? Oh, geez, I don't know if I, again, have the energy to actually look for it, seek it out.
The answer to that question, though, is there good music out there? Anyone under 30 will be like, oh, of course there is. Here's this and this and this and this and this. And anyone over 30 will be like, nah, just listen to the stuff you got.
Yeah, true. And anyone under 30 is going, oh, that's stuff from 30 years ago. That's all garbage.
What do you listen to that for? What is this old people's music? Yeah, Grandpa.
There aren't enough computers involved in the production of this music. I don't like it. I mean,
it's too analog sounding.
Yeah.
So that's music.
Yeah. Just quickly, I've got to talk about that Spice Girls Prince comparison. Real quick, for all our Prince friends out there and the shushers, hey guys, hey girls, and everybody.
I don't remember this reference at all, so refresh my memory.
Okay, so you guys on the Peach and Black podcast recently reviewed, or a couple of months ago now, whenever it was, reviewed the Exodus album by the NPG.
Yes. Featuring
one Prince Rogers Nelson, now, slash Tora Tora.
It was Toe Jam said it, right?
What's that?
This quote that you're going to say.
No, but years ago when I heard the song Exodus Has Begun, which is on this album, right, I thought, geez, I've heard this somewhere before. It just sounded familiar. Just the tone of the song, maybe it's the key. I don't know. It was just, this sounds familiar. And then I remembered that it sounded just like a Spice Girls song called Move Over, which was on the Spice World album and also in a Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, because I remember Toe Jam said it sounds like it's a Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, because of the generation after generation. And the song, and the Spice Girls song is, that's right, they yell out like, Generation Next. And that's kind of the similarity, but just the way it builds as well from the verse to the chorus. Very similar. So I don't know, because it was released after the Prince album, I don't know if somebody heard that and was subliminally channeling the NPG. But yeah, it put those two songs back to back, folks. The Exodus Has Begun and Move Over by the Spice Girls. And tell me you don't hear some bloody similarities there.
Because I did that after that because I just couldn't think what Spice Girls song sounds anything like Exodus. And then I went and listened to that song and I did hear a slight resemblance, but to me it was just like the overall, what's the right words, like the sonic palette.
Yep.
It's just the way it's all put together. Maybe it's the production, I don't know, but there was something that I heard and I'm like, oh, that does sound a bit like it, but overall I'd say not really, but slightly.
I'm just trying to piss off a heap of Prince fans. Like, how dare you compare a Prince song to a Spice Girls? Oh my God, let me tell you something, player. Prince ain't never gonna sound like no Spice Girl, man. He ain't no Mel B. He ain't no Scary Spice. What the fuck you talking about? Shit, man. Let me tell you something about Prince. He's a musical genius. Them Spice Girls are nothing but Muppets. Let me tell you something, man.
Simon Cowell's Muppets.
Shut up already. Damn.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good end to the show right there.
Thank you and good night. Drive safely.
Well, there we go. That's a show. This is episode 4. Oh, I'm amazed there was even episode 4, really. It's great. So tell me, where do I listen? Well, not me, but where would people listen to your podcast? Where is it? YouTube or where is it?
All right, Wrestle Radio Australia and Social Audio Think Tank. That's the one about podcasting. You can find on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio.
I know TuneIn Radio. Oh, yeah, good.
TuneIn's good. TuneIn's good fun. When the app isn't crashing, it's it's great and convenient to take in radio stations from all over the world and podcasts. Yeah. So, great app, that one. And also Butts in Seats podcast. If you actually happen to be a wrestling fan and you want to hear reviews of WCW pay-per-views from the late 90s, it's a very politically incorrect show.
That's right up my alley.
There you go. So you can check that one out as well. And, Josh JD Armour is me on Twitter.
Whoa. Go and find him and ask him all the questions about wrestling.
That's right.
In Australia.
Is it fake? Is it real? Is it choreographed?
I heard it was all fake.
I love those people. They're good.
Oh, there we go. That was good.
People are going to be listening. It's going to be like, this experience of listening to this episode is going to be like going to a Ross Noble concert where 30 minutes later you're like, hang on, what happened to the other story? Let's go back.
How did we get to here from that? But that's what I like this show to be. It's a conversation. I don't just want to go, oh, we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll talk about this, but then that'll make us talk about this and 50 other things. And then we'll end up somewhere so far from where we started.
That's like with like I said, I had notes. My notes legit consisted of the Spice Girls Prince comparison, Letterman, and like that was about it. It was like 4 words that I just thought, okay, that's all I need. That's all I want.
Oh, good stuff.
Good times.